Unless there are any questions, why don't I hand it over to Jeff and let him give us a brief overview. I would, again, keep it brief. You guys be sure to ask questions if you want to learn something further, and then we'll talk about how to craft next steps. Jeff.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to share this brief presentation out. Oops.
Jeff, do you want me to let you share the screen?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. You're a co-host, so you should now be able to do that.
Okay. There we go. All right. Can everyone see the organization chart? Good to go.
Yeah.
Yep, we got it.
Great, great. Okay, so I wanted to give a jumping off point. So just going to give a brief overview of what IT looks like for the town, and which includes the public schools as well. So we'll start right away with the organization chart. And here you'll see the persons in yellow are the town, basically the town support. If you look to the left, George is the dedicated staff member to the town. He is there 100%. And then myself, Joe Vano, James Flynn, and Sam England, the other gentleman in yellow, we dedicate a percentage of our time, and it's whatever is needed. If it's 100% a day, if it's 2% a day, we support the town. Now I did put this up so that you understand the entire department structure, because all of these staff members are available to the town and have been utilized by the town when large projects come up. One in particular was the police department. When that was built, all of these staff members were on call and did come over and help with that project. The services contract, basically we provide what's called IaaS, or infrastructure as a service, for the town. So in addition to the staff members, we have this list of services. I can just quickly go through them. It's internet access at 3 gigabit speed, which is the fastest speed seen in Connecticut right now. Most governments and most schools do have 1 gigabit speed, but we provide 3, which results in absolutely no slowdown for anybody on the system. We do have redundant internet access at the PD. We provide web filtering, which does help with malware, viruses, and basic adult sites. We have endpoint security, which is your antivirus and malware throughout the town and on all servers. We provide all server hardware. So all server hardware that's in town hall is provided through the Board of Ed. All your network hardware as well. The firewall service is what keeps us safe. This is an outsourced service through the state. So where our internet is, our firewall service is. And one note as I go down, these products are all next generation services. These are all top of the line. We choose them through Gartner's Magic Quadrant. They have to be in the top 5 of their product category. So we also provide backup service for the town, message archiving services. We store over 100 million emails that we can search through at any time. We have mail protection for the town, including a new ATP service. The phone service, the phone system is again through this contract, as well as wireless system. And Kate, I know we put in the wireless access points through the town, but the controller and all the management of it is done through the contract. This gives you a nice picture of what the town network looks like. And I've included here not only the town buildings, but also the school buildings. We do have a nice ring, a redundant ring throughout Darien. The town hall and the police department are the core data centers here. Town hall containing the majority of the servers for the town and for the schools. The police department has their own servers. However, the PD and the town hall are redundant to each other. One point I want to make here is that I did forget the beaches. So Weed Beach and Pear Tree do come in. Can you see my mouse here? Is my mouse moving for you guys? Yep. So much that Fitch Academy comes in through a VPN through our internet, the beaches do come in the same way. So they would be right over here, and I'll fix that and send that out. But as you can see, the fire departments are in through Ethernet, public garage, PD, town hall, and everybody utilizes the CEN internet. Now, as I said before, if there is an issue here ever, we do have the police department, and that can handle internet for everyone. Quick hardware summary for the town. You did receive the computer and printer inventory. That computer replacement cycle is every 3 years. And this past year we did skip over because we had all of our computers up to date and in very good shape. But we are starting that process again this year. We would very much like to get the first year of a computer replacement into this year's budget. The minimum computer specifications are there. And Microsoft Office 2016 is the only piece of software that is provided on that computer. Printers are on a department basis, so kind of decentralized, as are monitors. Our network device summary, and I'll try to keep this as untechnical as possible. Again, all town hall network switches and servers are provided by the Board of Ed. For the technical people out there, the servers are hyper-converged. These are SimpliVity based, which is a Hewlett-Packard product. And we are going to replace them over the summer with a company called Nutanix, which also provides hyper-converged type of servers. And what this means is that they are highly redundant, highly reliable. Our routers are Cisco based. Our switches are Brocade, which is now Ruckus based. And the phone system is Mitel based, and that phone system is district and town wide. Everybody can dial 4-digit anywhere in the town and in the schools. The police department servers are Nutanix. So this was a new implementation last year. Once, if we can, we would like to get the town hall up to Nutanix, and once we do, the PD and the town hall will be fully redundant and will be disaster recovery sites for each other. Data is backed up 3 times a day, both on site and into the cloud. Servers are replicated between town hall and police currently, just as a copy. Internet access, again, is redundant. It can go out town hall, it can go out the PD. Phone system is redundant. We have 4 different digital access lines out of 4 different buildings, so that if one goes down, we can route traffic out in and out another site. And also helping us on this, the network is basically monitored 24/7 by an outside company in Milford. Basic software summary for this is that basically the software for each department is very decentralized. Each department is responsible for their own software. We do recommend that software do go to the cloud. We prefer not to have it on site, but sometimes financial responsibility causes us to keep it on site. And as a department, we're responsible for making the software work. And then it's up to the department to utilize and train on that software. And then basically, John, you had mentioned just different observations, advantages, disadvantages. I think the synergy of having one IT department for both the town and Board of Ed has been an immense money saver for the town. You know, we share hardware, the software, and the staff. And it's amazing how much crosses over both entities.
Something I wish a strategy I wish we could implement more broadly.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
What's that?
Moving on, please.
Moving on. And the one piece that I think we really need to look at is software selection. And it's a difficult topic because a lot of the software in the town is decentralized. It's gone its own way, and each piece of software has its own data set. And the toughest part of this is that there isn't a package out there that will handle every department in town hall. There are attempts. I think, Kate, I think Tyler is probably one of the biggest that does this, but it won't do what a lot of our departments need it to do. So there are attempts at it, but how we integrate a lot of this data, I'm not sure how it's going to happen. Another point was print management. I know we have some work centers out there, and we do have a lot of printers, as you can see with the inventory list. Could it be consolidated? We tried it in the schools, where about 5 years ago we said, okay, we're only printing the work centers, and it became pretty difficult. So then we started getting desktop printers back, not as much as we had before, but we started seeing desktop printers back on desks. And one last point is policy, written policy, like an acceptable user policy and disaster recovery. Even though we have it informally, I think we need to get it down on paper. And this is a process we started just before COVID, and unfortunately COVID hit, and we just need to get back to it and get it on paper. So that's it in a quick nutshell. And I apologize. I've been out for the last couple of days. I have to have surgery next week, so I got down what I could, and hopefully this can be a jumping off point for everybody to ask questions and start moving forward.
Just one question for me, Jeff. What are the protections that we have in place in case there is a ransomware demand that obviously has affected a lot of municipalities? If that were to come our way, what do you have in place to fight that? Right.
The backup system we have is very robust. So not only do we have backups here, so say at town hall, the backups are over at the PD, they're on a device at town hall, they're also in the cloud. So at any time we can restore back 4 hours. So once we identify any kind of threat, we can stop everything. We can go back and take a look at our images and see which ones are good and restore right back. And we have done that. That happened about 5 years ago in the schools, and we were able to stop the ransomware on one. We caught it, and it only affected one computer, and we were able to restore that. Unfortunately, I had to go back one day, but it was proven. So
great. Anybody on the committee have questions for Jeff?
Yeah, David Young here. Sorry, and I apologize for dropping. The power in my house dropped for about a minute or 30 seconds, and had to recover because I don't have a UPS at home, and I will reconsider that. But anyway, the ransomware, though, great question, great answer, and thank you, Jeff, for putting this together. This is a fantastic, and as I think I mentioned last time, I do IT for a living, and this looks really solid. So I appreciate that. I did also read the report it was done at the end of 2020, and that was crazy helpful, and I'm sure that was helpful for you as well. I'm guessing to kind of help set direction. So one of the things I noticed in there, and kind of related to the ransomware too, have we put in kind of email, I'll say spam filtering for lack of a better word, but just kind of, do we have something in front of that at this point so that all the emails going through something and being checked before it gets through, which, to be clear, will not necessarily stop ransomware, because
Right.
somebody clicks on something bad, it's bad, but it's at least another layer of possible
Yes. Yeah.
protection.
Yeah, we do. We have, so the mail system at the town is Office 365. We have Microsoft Filter, but before that we have Barracuda's products. So we're a Barracuda shop for ATP. So Advanced Threat Protection is sitting there.
Fantastic. Good. Thank you. Yeah, because I think the report called out that wasn't on. So that's great to hear that's on now. So excellent.
Other questions Holly.
Two questions.
for Rob? Go ahead.
Hi, sorry, John. Two questions from me. A, Jeff, on the printer list you sent yesterday, can we just get a couple columns added there, cost and when we bought them? Just if we can add that. And my second question is back to ransomware, cybersecurity. John, I don't know if you know this question, or maybe we should do some digging. What's our coverage, right? Do we have 1 million, 3 million, 5 million in coverage, just in case? Like these ransomwares are becoming more and more prevalent. I've seen everywhere people asking for 100,000 to 17 million, and they usually want Bitcoin. But be curious what our coverage is from an insurance standpoint.
I can get you the policy.
Great, thanks, Kate.
Yeah, I mean, I've struggled with that type of coverage and sort of, it's obviously a market that's evolved a lot, and trying to decide sort of what the right level of coverage is, and also kind of what you're recovering from. If we have something in place that's pretty robust and that allows us to restore with really just say a lost day of data and upgrades and updates, as Jeff mentioned, if you had a certain level of coverage, what would that money be used for? And then how do you kind of justify the premiums? I even in my own business, I've struggled with trying to decide whether we should get coverage like that. Actually, what we ended up doing was making sure we had robust systems, but spent money on retainers for public relations firms, because if it got out that our systems were compromised, that's messaging that we would need to manage externally. So I don't know there, but we ought to think about that policy. And you guys probably have a better and more up-to-date perspective on how people are thinking about that type of insurance.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Kate.
Other questions? Okay. Yeah, I could. Why don't we, Jeff? Why don't you unshare your screen and we can kind of see everybody on our grid?
John, can you hear me? I had a couple questions.
Please.
Thank you, Jeff. This was really helpful, and
Welcome.
it was really helpful. And the other audit that was done too, getting that document from Kate was really great. I had a couple questions. You've touched on a few of them already. One of them was the Reaper graphics management. If you had sort of outsourced that or had somebody who managed that equipment to consolidate, it sounds like you've been over that a few times. So do we have generators at Town Hall and the police department? I was just curious, when you say those are our two hubs, it sounds like your redundancy and everything is really top notch.
Both buildings are fully generated.
Okay, I was just curious because they're so close to each other. So to have backup sites that are so physically close, I was just worried about that.
Very true. We do, and just to build on that, we actually do replicate servers to our cloud backup, so that if there was an issue with Town Hall and PD, we could actually spin up servers in different schools or wherever it need be. So
Awesome. No,
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you. Another question about the help desk. If you could just a slight sort of overview description, is that all integrated amongst the town and the Board of Ed? Is it a like web-based system that folks can get to remotely and your team kind of picks things up? Like, how does that work? I'm just curious what that process is like.
Yep. It is a fully web-based system. The same one is used for the town and for the schools. It is available via web. We also have a dedicated phone number. So we do have somebody manning that phone from probably around 6 in the morning till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And yes, it covers the entire life cycle of any issue that comes through. And we can produce reports on it.
Okay, great. One other question because you sent this out last night, thank you. I did a quick review of your slides. Head counts. I'm just curious on your ratio in terms of the ratio of your IT staff to the folks who are supported. That's a sort of a metric I've always used with budgeting, and I'm curious where you stand with that because I didn't see that in this document.
Yeah, well, a little tricky with the town, and because there are percentages of people, so we didn't do a true ratio. But if you look at it, we did the ratio for the schools, and we're at about 450 to 1. So it's a very bad ratio. I think by industry standards, should be under a couple hundred. On the school side, we are looking at adding FTEs. I think on the town side, we're probably more like 150 to 1. If we're just counting George, who's the dedicated tech, you're at about 150 to 1. So it's not too bad. And then with the partial staff members coming in, I think we get good coverage for the town.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm almost done, John. One
No,
more.
you're good.
I made a list this morning after I looked at your slides. My other question was about a security specialist. I mean, obviously you have quite a number of things in place to handle this, but I think we've all found over recent years that a lot of IT teams are moving towards having somebody who's almost dedicated in that realm. So I'm kind of curious about, if you just said you might be hiring FTEs. I'm just curious about where you stand on that. And also along with that, if you run any of the software, a lot of them are hosted and cloud-based, but to do like false phishing with staff, basically as an education campaign, right? To kind of periodically send out false phishing to see how many hits you get. And then if they get it wrong, give them a little tutorial that pops up and sort of forces them to learn from the mistake. I'm just curious if you've done any of that. So.
Yep, absolutely. And in fact, Kate, who was the firm that was in, who did the audit?
Bloom, and they did a
Bloom
phishing
was in
test.
there. Yeah, and part of their audit was a phishing test. And we are actually contracting right now with a firm to do a cybersecurity audit of the schools, which will include the town. So it'll cover the entire town. But in terms of hiring somebody for security, it really hasn't come up. And even with Bloom's recommendation, it didn't come up right now. But you're right. We see that there's senior vice presidents of cybersecurity, and that's all they do. In the private sector. So yeah, it's in the back of my mind, but I don't know how we can fit one in to here, but we'll definitely keep it in mind.
Okay, and then I'll throw out my last couple things here, and if we don't have time today, that's fine. I just want to make sure you kind of got them. One is on just data storage, and you kind of touched on that earlier, but and it sounds like that's something you guys know with both the software solutions being done by department, and I was just sort of curious, are there sort of data storage standards in terms of how each department is storing things? If there's partial lockdowns on the folders where things are going, is everyone saving to the network, or are people working on local PC drives? Usually that's a big issue in most places I've walked into, and I'm curious if that's been tackled yet, because it's usually a project in itself to get everybody sort of onto the drives and mainly to get them into the cloud, right? To have a consolidated cloud storage so that everybody's stuff is in one place. Right.
And no, that's a very good topic to look at, because everything's been informal, nothing's been written down. We do actually, our storage for the town is local. So we have a server that is housing all of our data. It's backed up to the cloud, but it's not accessible via the cloud.
Okay.
So, but again, we don't have any formal policy on it. So that's something we can definitely take a look at.
Okay, great. And that my other note about that was remote access, and like, how did everybody work remotely because obviously if things aren't in the cloud, it makes that a lot more challenging. So you've kind of, we don't have to talk about that more. Obviously, that's kind of a project maybe to consider and tackle in the future. Mm-hmm. My last comment here was, and you talked about this a few meetings ago, but the IT budget is something that I'd like us to address at some point. I just think from a seen where there's places where we could save money, and you've obviously done a very good job of this, but the idea that each department is sort of reporting on their IT separately in their independent budgets, and there's no, or my understanding is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no sort of comprehensive IT budget where you're tracking the billing codes for each department and they're all listed there, but so that you personally can run metrics and actually show as a whole what's being spent and see where synergies are around similar types of software and whatnot. I've just always found when you walk in someplace and there is disparity and different people are buying different things, that's usually one of the first tools to help see alignments and report back on what we're actually spending comprehensively in terms of IT spend. So.
Terrific. Other questions for Jeff? Okay, Jeff, terrific. Thank you very much. So in terms of where we focus going forward, the way I've kind of done committees like this in the past is to break off individual groups or individuals to maybe tackle key topics in the spirit of kind of casting a wide net for things we might consider or think about, and then to report back to the group, which then would take those ideas, prioritize them, and try to either come up with an IT strategy, or better yet, take what Jeff has in terms of his overview of how things work today and add to it or suggest improvements, changes, edits that might help it move forward. And thinking about it and listening to this discussion today, there seem to kind of be three buckets that at least came to my mind. One of them is what I would call issue resolution. So Jeff helpfully laid out a few things that bothered him or have been on his list for priorities going forward. And so one thing we could do as a committee is explore each one of those issues in more detail. You know, why haven't we done it up to this point? What would be required to implement it? And how could we maybe add to his thinking or use the weight of this committee to try and move some of that forward? So that could be a category. A second category, and we haven't touched on this today, but it's come up in other board meetings, and that is sort of citizen interface, right? So in prior discussions, we've talked about payment technology that the town has in place to facilitate citizens getting what they need done through town government. But there's probably 50 things I'm not thinking of that we could look at that's at the interface of town and citizens. And what are the things that would make that experience much, much better? And so we could do things like think about what other towns are doing, maybe some citizen surveys who are users of town services, and ask what could we do to make that more seamless from a 21st century technology perspective. But I don't want to overspend. I mean, cost efficiency is one of our objectives, but it would be great if our citizenry thought, wow, my ability to interact with the town on a 21st century IT basis is the best, right, that I've ever seen. That this town is fantastic. They have their act together. So that would be an interesting, I think, group of ideas. And then finally, just around kind of Holly's point to cost savings and efficiencies, and just taking a close look at that. And it could be around personnel, processes, equipment spend, insourcing versus outsourcing, and really just pushing that really hard. And I think this group is particularly well positioned to do that because we have a non-government, well, you, not me, have a non-government perspective on how this is done in the business world, that maybe some of that could be leveraged to support Jeff and help him feel that his department's even more efficient and cost effective than it is now. And that could also be something that's informed by best practices in other towns, surveys, that type of thing to surface ideas. So anyway, those three buckets, kind of issue resolution, citizen interface, and cost savings and efficiency improvements were kind of three buckets that came to my mind. You guys are the experts, so what do you think? Is that a way that we could maybe organize to start to get some work done? Something else we could do? What do you think?
John, just want you to know that we lost David, Rob, and Sean. They dropped off.
Yeah, they are not here. So that's the beauty of recorded meetings with minutes. So yeah, and Jeff Krause had sent me a note earlier saying that he had to miss today's meeting. So I can certainly brief him later. But any reactions? That sound like a plan?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do is kind of get sort of single point leadership for each one of those groups, and maybe the person who leads that group kind of decides what's next. Obviously, interaction with Jeff will be important, but to think about, okay, what could we do to put some meat around the bones of this particular topic to have something to discuss at our next meeting. So a few folks obviously have dropped off, and I could reach out to them, but Holly or Jim or I guess some of the others, do any of these categories strike your fancy, or is there one that maybe you'd like to add to the list that would be something you'd like to explore as part of this? I mean, one of the things also about volunteers on committees, you're here for your expertise, but I also want you to get you involved in something that's interesting for you. That's actually an area of passion for mine. I'd like to pursue that because I think the added enthusiasm will result in an even better end product. So if you have something you'd like to tackle, let me know. Of course, there is always the chairman's prerogative in assigning such tasks, which I shall do forthwith. Holly, please.
I was trying to let somebody else jump in first, but since
Yeah,
I just talked.
that never happens with me, so good luck.
Okay, so my expertise and what I've done in the past and what I'd be interested in is surveys as a space. Like personally, I think starting with an internal survey, and Jeff may even have this kind of thing that he's done before, and we could just modify it and run it again. But I think doing an annual IT survey, both of the internal staff, sort of to get the department and user feedback from teachers. I'm sure he does back on the school side, but on the town side, getting each department's feedback. But then also as you pointed out, John, the sort of client side of the town, like putting something out there to ask people in the town what their experience has been using the interface with the town and if they have recommendations. I think that's usually a good baseline so that you could run that again in a year and use that as a way to show progress. And that way Jeff's team gets the accolades they deserve annually for the changes that are going on. The budget is something that I've always done. I've had to run incredibly complex budgets because of the way professional service firms are structured, and there's a bunch of companies on the back end, so you have to make sure everybody gets billed the right way, and it sounds like Jeff has a similarly complex environment, so that's something I'm happy to help advise on and strategize on. And the data organization is also something I've done multiple times in my career, is sort of structuring, getting everybody sort of organized in whatever way each department needs to move to the cloud. So those are all things I'm interested in.
Why don't we actually create a committee that does that, right? So you could look at surveys and surfacing user perspective, whether town employees or citizens. You could look at and start with asking a lot of questions about cost savings, which is how are these things done, and had you considered X in terms of a potential source of efficiency? And then I like that point about data organization, how it's set up, how it's accessed, how it's backed up, how it's accessed if we have to go to the backup, that type of thing, I think would be terrific. So why don't we'll just create a committee that focuses on those things. I think that surveys that you might do will inform maybe this sort of citizen and user interface committee that I think is also important, particularly the citizen experience with IT. So there will be some overlap with that committee, but I think that's great. So Ollie, I'll put you in charge of that. And then I can talk to some of the other folks to test interest on working with Jeff directly on some of the issue resolution of the issues that he brought up towards the end of his presentation. And then more broadly, just about sort of citizen and user interface with our system, which I think feels like it should be a discrete category just because it really focuses on citizen experience with town government, which I think is important. Other thoughts or reactions? Okay, so what I'll do, there's some, we'll get some minutes, and obviously there's a video of this that'll be made available publicly. I'll also write up sort of my view on these kind of different committees, make sure everybody who was not on the call or had to drop off has that and has a chance to react to it, but also see if I can surface some volunteers to maybe take on some of this additional work, and we'll send out a note, and that'll be the basis for our agenda at the next meeting. And hopefully at that meeting, we've got kind of our subcommittees working, and we have some initial perspectives from those committees around ideas, what they'd like to do next, obstacles or pitfalls, that type of thing. And I'll suggest some work streams that each committee could pursue as we go forward. Sound okay? Okay, Kate, when is our next meeting?
I believe it's April 21st, the third Thursday. Yeah, so that should be April 21st.
Okay, there is a very strong chance I'm out of town that week, and just where I will be is going to make that really hard.
Okay.
Is this something that we could maybe move to the following week without creating too much trouble?
Not a problem for me.
Okay, is everybody on the call okay with, that would be the 28th, is that right?
Yes.
That works better for me.
Terrific. All right, so why don't we do 4/28, same bat time, same bat channel. Sound okay?
Yep, and if we get that posted quickly, it can be a regular meeting, correct, Krista?
Yes, I wanted to jump in here. I am not a member of the committee, but very interested as both a Darien resident and an employee here in Town Hall of this discussion. When you're creating your sub work groups, please all know that you are still subject to meeting requirements of warnings and minutes. They don't need to be recorded. They just need to be publicized with warnings. So just an FYI as you're forming your subgroups.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else for the good of the order?
Minutes?
What's that? Oh, minutes from the last thing. I'm sorry. Does anyone have any comment? They look fine to me. Anyone have any comments on that? All right, I shall deem them approved, absent any comment, and terrific. So next meeting on April 28th, I will send around a note with some summary points to get our groups moving ahead. And any questions, just contact me directly, pick up the phone, call me, and I'll take your call or call you right back if I'm tied up. But appreciate everybody's help and volunteering for this. Jeff does a great job, and anything we can do to support him with these ideas and help him feel like the group has come together to empower the IT function in the town, not just for him, but for all the people we serve, I think would be terrific. So appreciate everybody's help and look forward to collaborating on that point. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Some of you have your green on, others, however, Mr. Ginsburg, there you go. This is not Blue Day, Jeremy. Get with the program. All right. All right. Everybody have a great day and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Bye-bye.